Just a couple of additional workshops that I wanted to spotlight for everybody's attention and make sure that you are aware of the upcoming events that the TPA is going to be hosting. The first is the Building Support for Walkable and Bikeable Communities workshop, where we will be joined by America's Bike Mayor John Bowders. He's a former elected official from California, and this will be an in-person workshop only. But he is going to talk about how do we engage people effectively, how do we communicate the benefits of walking and biking, building support for those modes, and overcoming barriers to change. That will be on Monday, November the 3rd from 2 to 4 p.m. We will also be joined virtually on Thursday, November 20th by Chris and Melissa Bruntlett from the Dutch Bicycling Embassy. They are going to be hosting a virtual webinar via Zoom, which you can register for at palmbeachtpa.org/Dutch cycling webinar. We are going to have a conversation with them about how the Dutch built a world-class bicycling network and how your community can implement safe infrastructure and have effective outreach. So please do consider registering for these events. If you would like a URL, it's just palmbeachtpa.org/events, and that is the best way to see all of the fun things that we have coming up in educational events that we would like you to participate in. So to dive in today, I'm going to actually start by kicking off with a recent roundup of the kind of things that have been happening with the state and what we're going to be talking about today. Generally speaking, what we are going to be discussing is micromobility in terms of e-bikes and e-scooters, as we talked about, or as we have in our webinar description. These are generally the devices that you see on the screen. They are your e-scooters, your e-bicycles, your hoverboards, your e-unicycles, or one-wheels. We'll talk a little bit more about about those definitions of what makes up a micromobility device and what makes up an e-bike, but that's generally what we're going to be going over. Things that we are not going to be talking about today are, first and foremost, e-motos. The e-moto is generally something that exceeds the capabilities of an e-bicycle. It's generally marketed as a scooter, moped, or e-dirt bike. These really don't fit into the public right-of-way system as we have developed it, and they are, in fact, generally not allowed on public right-of-ways in the state of Florida. They exceed all the class restrictions that are placed on e-bicycles. Generally, they don't have pedals, although some are marketed as e-bicycles and have pedals, but their capabilities are otherwise beyond that of an e-bicycle. And that could be that their wattage for their electric motor is higher than what's allowed by the state, or they don't have all the standard safety equipment that would come with something that a bicycle would typically have. So we're going to jump into the statutory updates that happened from the Florida 2025 legislative session. This is just a brief update on some of the things that have changed. I don't think anybody will be surprised by any of this information. This is a high-level overview, so we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty or the merits of it, but we are going to just provide what local communities' policy regulatory frameworks have changed are based on the state legislative session. Before we do that, just kind of briefly going over the e-bicycle classification that is found by the classes in Florida Statutes 316.003. And then there are a few other regulations related to e-bicycles and electric bicycles and conventional bicycles. These are your statutory references that you're going to need if you want to learn more about what e-bikes and what e-bicycles and bicycle regulations are currently on the books within Florida. So there's generally two types of bicycle that receive a electric assist, and that is in the form of pedaling or throttling. The class 1 bicycle can go up to 20 miles per hour, and that is generally pedal assisted. A class 2 is what's defined as a throttle assisted, that goes as well 20 miles per hour as well. And then the class 3 is a 28 mile per hour pedal assist bicycle. So these are the three classes that are generally recognized, not just locally in Florida. There's a few other states that have this similar type of classification system. I'm not sure. Looks like I got moved back, so I'm just going to make sure that we're on the right slide. Where you are able to ride is on roadways, bike lanes, trails, multi-use paths, and sidewalks, with the caveat that unless riding in these areas or by district is prohibited in the local code of ordinances or other regulatory framework that is established by cities. Um, and then generally speaking, we encourage all e-bicyclists to wear a helmet, regardless of if they are under 16. If you are under the age of 16, you will have to legally, you are required to ride with a helmet. And I see a few hands raised, so we'll save those questions for the end of the discussion when we get through my presentation, Kathy's presentation, and Ashley's presentation. Thank you for your interest, though. The micromobility devices that's generally regulated by state statute are such that they can't.
Hey Brian,
They
I'm
gen.
sorry to interrupt. I think some people are having issues seeing the slides. They're saying that the presentation is coming across really small and that your speaker screen is enlarged. Are you able to
We
adjust
can
those
flip that.
settings?
Give us 1 second.
Thank you. It's appearing okay on my end, but it might be the screen sharing settings.
And just to let everybody know, if in their Zoom settings, they should be able to change the view from one setting to another, so that they should be able to get the information across. Not sure why that is coming across that way, but we will flip that around hopefully, and that should. Okay. Is it showing up better now, Melissa?
It's showing correctly on my end. I just wanted to clarify that for others. If you're having issues, if you go up to the top right of your screen where it says My View, you should be able to adjust that, and you can click Shared Content Only. You can do Standard, whichever works best for your purposes.
Mhm.
If anyone's not able to adjust, please let us know in the Q&A, and let's monitor that before we move forward.
Okay. Thank you. So we can get the screen share back up, please.
Okay, it's looking like
Just
people are not able to change the view of the screen. So perhaps we could stop sharing and then reshare again.
we'll do that.
Thank you. Okay, I think that worked. Thank you, Brian. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. All right, I will flip back just a few slides to get back to the kind of critical content of what we are going over today, just to make sure we don't miss anything. Um, So, with respect to what we're going to be talking about, I do want to mention that we are going to be generally covering uh, e-bicycles and e-scooters at a very high level. Although there are other micromobility devices that are important to recognize that they do exist in our system, such as e-skateboards, one wheels, hoverboards, and e-unicycles. What we're not going to be generally talking about is e-motos. So these are also known as e-dirt bikes, e-scooters, e-mopeds, etc. Generally, these exceed the power capabilities and functionality um, of the e-bicycle system that's been established by Florida statute, meaning they're not allowed generally on public rights of way because they're not insured, they're not titled, they don't come with the standard safety equipment that's required to operate a motor vehicle on streets. So these are something that we are not going to be talking about generally today, but it might come up in conversation. So just to kind of dive into where we are right now with the state statutes and some of the 2025 session updates, we are generally going to be conversing today about e-bicycles. I went through the classification system kind of at a high level. What you need to know is that e-bicycles are generally limited to about 20 miles per hour, although there is a class of bicycles that allows up to about 28 miles per hour when you do a pedal assist. However, there are options for a throttle and a pedal assist at 20 miles per hour. Generally, e-bicycles are allowed to operate in public rights of ways unless they are excluded from operating in certain areas by local ordinance. So if there are local municipalities which have said maybe there's a recreational path that they do not wish to have bicycles, that is an option for them. But we'll get into some of that local policy research that's been completed by the Safe Kids subcommittee on micromobility, comprised of the speakers that we have this morning for our first session. And of course, we generally would encourage everybody to ride a helmet. If you're over the age of 16, you're not legally required. However, everybody should be riding a helmet, riding with an e-bicycle with a helmet. Similarly, for micromobility, the same rights and responsibilities apply there. Legally required for anybody under the age of 16. Anybody over the age of 16, we do strongly encourage to ride with a helmet. So, micromobility devices are generally about 15 mile per hour typical speed, but we've seen that these devices can generally go up to 28 miles per hour. There are additional characteristics which the state does opine on in terms of its legislative action with the width of the device, the typical weight of the device, the typical weight of the person that is being carried on the device. But what you need to know is that if it has wheels and a motor and it can generally go about 15 miles per hour, it's more than likely classified as a micromobility device in terms of state statutes, which is based out of Florida Statute 316. And those references are provided on this slide, and these slides will be posted afterwards, so you can refer back to them and get a direct link to the materials. The 2025 legislative session through Senate Bill 462 did provide some government regulations to options to local governments. So I'm going to go briefly through those and just provide some insights, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. I don't think that any municipality has taken up on much of this information quite yet, but we'd love to hear about what people are doing. So the first change is that the legislature enabled local governments to place age requirements on e-bicycle and micromobility devices. So, for example, if a municipality wanted to create a restriction that said a rider under the age of 16 is no longer permitted to ride an e-bicycle, that appears to be an option now, as well as requiring a government photo ID to be issued of riders. That is not a requirement from the state, but the local governments are now able to place a requirement on riders to have a government issued photo ID. The state enables the local governments to have trainings for e-bicycle safety and micromobility safety, which is something that many governments and local partners have already been doing. The TPA and Safe Kids, Healthcare District, the Department of Transportation, Village of Wellington have all already undertaken, educational efforts to try to make sure that people are riding safely with e-bicycles and micromobility. If you have an event you would like to partner with us on, please let us know, and we'd be happy to, see if it's a possibility to attend. The state also provided a reference to Chapter 316.008, which is a local powers statute in terms of regulating the transportation system specifically for e-bicycles and e-micromobility devices. So I do encourage all the local governments who are, have traffic control authority or have contract traffic control authority, maybe through the Palm Beach County Sheriff, to take a look at that and see what options are available to you. And some requirements that I believe are only related to e-bicycles come in the form of tampering and manufacturing for e-bicycles themselves. So let's start with tampering. Tampering, as defined in the statute, is more or less anything that would modify the device to go faster or slower or perform differently than otherwise regulated by those classifications. So e-bicycle rider cannot, hack the computer and tell the motor to go over 28 miles per hour. That is not prohibited. That is not allowed in Florida statute, as well as manufacturing requirements. So you are required as a manufacturer to publish the classification of e-bicycle on the bike that you are selling. So for any bike shop owners who are maybe on the call, just make sure that if you're selling an e-bicycle and it doesn't have that sticker posted on it that shows the class 1, 2, or 3 of e-bicycle, that does need to be provided, and that you do need to make sure that that is moving forward as you're putting the equipment out into the open. I do want to transition now from talking at the statewide level to talking about some of the local policies and the information that has been housed locally. So, to give a little bit of a primer and a little bit of a tease to what we have been working on with the Micromobility Safety Committee out of Safe Kids, Palm Beach County. So, a few of us have gotten together through the efforts of Safe Kids to try to tackle micromobility as an issue at a larger scale. And one of the first things that we completed was focusing on local policies that have already been adopted, that are already on the books for e-bicycles and for e-scooters. So I'm going to give a very high level overview of this information, but I'm going to also welcome, Courtney Cannon when we do our micromobility panel discussion after this to please share any additional insights that I might have missed. I do have a couple of municipalities that I wanted to spotlight and say thank you for all the work that you have been doing on this effort, and I'll do that as we go through the topics. So first and foremost, we have the subcommittee makeup, just to kind of give an overview. This subcommittee is made up of healthcare providers, police departments, and sheriff department, the school district, municipal and county staff, transportation providers, and nonprofits. So we're really proud that we have a great subcommittee working towards this. This is not a subcommittee of the TPA, but one that we participate on as an agency. And if you're interested, I'd encourage you to reach out to Kathy Wall. She's our coordinator for that, and she's doing a wonderful job. The research that the subcommittee made up of electric bicycles, motorized scooters, golf carts, and low-speed vehicles. So you get a little bit of a bonus today in terms of golf carts and low-speed vehicles. Generally speaking, we're going to focus on the first two subjects of the screen, electric bikes and motorized scooters. So we'll get into that. The development of the Florida 2025 legislative statutes really helped to update a lot of the micromobility and e-bicycle regulations that we had on the books. From what we could tell, the most recent legislative changes shifted the e-bicycle and micromobility conversation away from a strictly e-bike and e-scooter sharing company focus to larger focus on the individual rider. So in terms of e-bicycle regulations and what we have seen from local municipalities being responsive to that, most local governments have regulations for prohibiting the deployment of bike share fleets in their local jurisdiction, especially dockless systems. So those are the ones where, a few years ago, there was a social media phenomenon on where you could find those dockless bicycles. And while some communities really struggled with that, others did flourish. This system that I'm showing here on the left is actually a picture from Washington, D.C. For their dockless system, where they have been able to kind of have corrals and other features where people can park the bikes and return them. Otherwise, they get a fee. So the systems are still there. They're still in place, and they're still recognized in Florida statute. But the local governments haven't quite gotten to a place locally in Palm Beach County where they are responding quite yet to specific regulations on how operators should be going on their streets. There are some regulations where you are restricted to riding in parks and only riding on paved roads within the system, and then prohibitions for some areas otherwise might include like a downtown walking specific district such as Clematis Street or Atlantic Avenue in Delray Beach. And then other regulations are somewhat duplicative of the state statutes. So this relates to having lights on the bicycle or yielding requirements, such as, bicyclists must yield to a pedestrian, for example. I would mention that the city of West Palm Beach does have some prohibitions for sidewalk riding in the city. That generally applies to the docked system that is currently in deployment of in the city downtown. Although all their municipalities do have some information about prohibitions on the fleets, they generally don't get into the operations of that. We also have motorized scooter research that we've completed. We've generally seen that the town of Lake Park has probably some of the more sophisticated conversation in terms of policy around motorized or electric scooters. There are some requirements and requests for riders to maintain a 15 mile per hour limit where permissible. So that's generally their shared use path system that is located within their mobility plan. There are some district and place-based limits, as I alluded to before. Some more central business district type locations, downtowns in the more coastal area have prohibitions on where you can ride through sidewalks, for example. I do want to call out a few notable elements from I believe, the village of Royal Palm Beach, that they specifically mentioned that, you really should only, their requirements are such that you only have one person per vehicle, requiring a use of a driver's license, and then daytime use only for these devices. So that is something that we have found as part of our research. There are communities. This is again just going back to Washington, D.C., where we just participated in the National Association of City Transportation Officials Conference. They do have bicycle and scooter storage with charging capabilities so that people can safely park their bicycle or e-device and charge it in a public setting without and leave it while taking transit, so they don't have to bring their vehicle on board. We do have a little bit of research about golf carts and low speed vehicles. I did want to point out that the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, they have really great information about what the differences are between golf carts, which generally are allowed to operate on streets, sidewalks, and paths if the local government permits them. And then low speed vehicles are generally permitted to ride only on streets. Low speed vehicles come with all the standard safety equipment, but they generally are, not really capable of going greater than 25 miles per hour, though there are some low speed vehicles which are much more capable than that. So there are really wonderful resources from the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. We're not going to get into that today, but I did want to mention that we do have some research on it if anyone is interested and would like to see that information. With respect to this, I did want to just mention that there are a couple of resources that are out there from the League of American Bicyclists. The bicycle friendly driver course is available to folks who would like to, continue driving, but really be a good person in terms of, or a friendly driver to bicyclists. That QR code will take you to get information about becoming a bicycle friendly driver. And you can take a course and a quiz online and receive a certification from them. And then in terms of sharing content as public officials, we try to ensure that we are making sure that we're on brand and on message, and making sure that the road is for everyone. So this graphic from the Florida Highway Safety Motor Vehicles is another example of, everybody uses our street. Everyone, is capable of doing it. The different types of vehicles that are there. We just think that it's really important to characterize that streets are for everyone and not just for people who are driving. So reinforcing that and using the system safely is a really great message from the DHSMV. Some of the key takeaways from these are that, first and foremost, the state statutes are continuing to evolve. We know that they probably could use a little bit more help in terms of what we are seeing locally and what is being responsive to. So I know we have some law enforcement groups that have responded that they would like to see more in terms of clarity and what they can and cannot regulate. Most of the ordinances that we have seen across Palm Beach County, we have 39 cities and the county itself, all of which have different regulations in terms of how we're going to regulate and move this conversation forward. And then lastly, the infrastructure can't keep pace with the emerging micromobility that has come out over the past few years. We have some really wonderful speakers who are going to talk about the infrastructure piece and the infrastructure side of that later on. So I'm going to wrap up, and I apologize for that little hiccup, but I believe that we have our next speaker available, Ashley Aronis. So if she could get called up and make sure that she can share screen and control.
Brian, we do have a question in the Q&A. Would you like to answer
Sure.
that now? Okay. The
Well,
questions, okay, are you able to see the questions at all?
yep, I've got it here. So
Perfect.
the question is the state considering a uniform approach to these regulations? Seems like citizens will not be able to know all of the local rules, which could be in effect in one area, but not in another. And that is a really wonderful question. I think that we certainly do have the need for a higher level of clarification on this matter. We talked to a lot of our local municipalities, and uh, for one jurisdiction drops, another picks up. And the unfortunate circumstances of that happen quite frequently in Palm Beach County, where you might have a county regulation from one location to a city regulation, and even where those devices are allowed on property versus off property for some of the major transportation organizations in Palm Beach County, like the school district, vary. So we do have a strong need to try to figure this out locally until the state can come up with a more uniform approach. But at this time, we don't see it taking shape quite yet. We're curious about if the 2026 legislative session will clarify and provide an expansion of that, but we haven't seen anything to date. Okay, with that, I see Ashley is up and ready, so I'll turn it over to her to bring us through riding safely.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Ashley, and I work with the Healthcare District of Palm Beach County. I am the Trauma Agency Specialist, and if you've never heard of the Healthcare District, hopefully you have. We are an independent taxing district that helps to try and fill the gaps within our healthcare system. And so within my role, I am able to study the data trends collected from the two trauma centers in Palm Beach County and figure out and see what education or safety education is missing from the community, and then create those initiatives to implement and to try and help reduce those trauma numbers from rising. So today I'll be talking about riding safely with micromobility. And first up, I have our dashboard of our trauma injury analysis over the last 5 years. So this dashboard does not include regular ER visits or mortality rates. This is specifically injuries that require trauma level care over the last 5 years in Palm Beach County specifically. So we'll see at the top here, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but at the top corner of the screen, we see the patient number, which is 1,174, which is pretty substantial because for us, one traumatic injury is one too many. And we'll see here, this might seem overwhelming as well, but bear with me. So that leading number in our vehicular category is bicycle riders. So that means they're not being hit by a vehicle, it's user error and or environmental hazards, followed by motor vehicle hitting a bicycle rider. Then we've introduced the electric bike category, electric scooter, and electric bike versus vehicle. So again, we'll see that largest number is at 518 for our bicycle riders. And then at the bottom corner, you'll see that the leading number for our pediatric group is our 12 to 15-year-olds at 45%, and with our adult category at 56 to 65-year-olds at 28%, followed by our 66 to 75-year-olds. So what I like to point out within this dashboard is maybe don't put, grandma and grandpa on the electric bike or the electric scooter without taking an extra precaution towards safety, but as well as what can we do as bicycle riders and electric bike operators, electric scooters to help prevent ending up in a trauma center. And I also included on the side here that the ER visits in the entire United States has increased from 34,000 to 87,800 in 2023. So if you don't take into consideration any safety concerns, you will most likely end up in the trauma center with a head injury. Traumatic brain injuries are going to be that number one that lands you in the trauma center and can also have long-lasting effects on your life. Followed by fractures, it'll be arm fracture, wrist fracture, collarbones. Those are the body parts you're going to use to try and catch yourself, and also hip fractures as well. And then we have our soft tissue injuries, sprains, strains, and lacerations, which won't lead you to a trauma center, but you'll probably have those in combination with a fracture, with a head injury, especially if you're not wearing your helmet, which is super, super important. So this is my favorite slide because I believe it's the most important and it's predictable writing. And I think it's something that is so simple we don't consider it or give it a second thought. There is safety in predictability. So with micromobility behavior, it varies across different vehicle types and it is predictable. So you have to know your device inside and out. You have to be able to respond to environmental hazards without a second to think about it. It needs to be something automatic. It needs to be something you don't have to think about. So practicing and getting to know your vehicle before taking it out on the road, knowing what handle accelerates, knowing what handle brakes, what the different features are, and knowing that you can operate it without, again, having to think about it. So that if you need to hit the emergency brake or accelerate a little faster, you can count on your device and that you know what you need to do in a split second. Then you also want to be communicating. You want to use hand signals and make eye contact with other road users. If they are not looking at you, they cannot see you, and it is safe to assume that they don't see you, especially since we have a lot of distracted driving in Florida, especially with texting and driving. Do not assume people can see you. It's just safer to assume they can't. Take that extra time to stop. Don't blow through the stop signs. Don't blow through the crosswalks because, again, it's not worth risking your life. In a perfect world, every driver would stop. You'd have the right of way. You'd be able to safely cross a crosswalk, but that's just unfortunately not the world we live in. So just take extra precaution in doing that. And then consistency, following the traffic rules and riding in those designated areas, making sure that if you are riding on the sidewalk, if it is allowed, that you're going with the flow of traffic whenever possible. And especially if you're in the bike lane, you got to go with that flow of traffic. You have to obey those stop signs, obey those traffic signals. And again, just take that extra second to just pause and make sure everyone can see you before proceeding. So some key safety practices, you want to wear that helmet that will prevent you hopefully from ending up in our trauma center and having a severe, traumatic brain injury. And also making sure you have regular maintenance so that your device will accelerate when it needs to and brake when you need it to, and making sure that it's in good working condition at all times. You also want to stay alert and avoid distractions. Again, distractions can happen for both the driver and the rider of a micromobility vehicle. Let's just all pay attention to what is on the road and what is ahead of us. And then just quickly, because I forgot one point for our common injuries here. Again, talking about that bicycle operator error and or environmental hazards. When you're on a bicycle, when you're on an e-bike, when you're on an e-scooter, little pieces of gravel, sticks, dents in the sidewalk, dents in the road, those will send you flying, and that's what causes these injuries and ending up in the trauma center. So that's just something super important that you have to stay aware of when you're operating on the sidewalk or on the road, taking into account that the little things are what can send you flying and pose a higher risk to you than it would a car. A car can just kind of go over a pothole, but if you hit even a small crack in the road, you could go flying, especially on an e-bike, on an e-scooter, when you can hit those high speeds. So in closing, riding predictably can save your life and prevent a visit to the trauma center. E-bikes, e-scooters, regular bicycles, they're fun, they're efficient, they're eco-friendly, but they take a little more precaution, especially when you're up against a 4,000-pound vehicle. So slowing down, wearing a helmet, and riding predictably will make all the difference in keeping you safe, and hopefully all together we can keep bringing down those trauma injury numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. All right. And our next speaker we're going to have come up is Kathy Wall with the Safe Kids Palm Beach County. She's going to talk to us about community engagement and trainings that she's been working on. She's single-handedly responsible for putting thousands of helmets on kids. So we appreciate her and her service, and we're looking forward to hearing from her today.
Thanks, Brian.
And you should be able to advance to your slide.
Let's see. Oh, look at me. Okay. It is All right, let's see if I don't get back into Ashley's. Okay, so thanks, Brian, and thanks everybody for being on here today. I'm excited to share with you some community engagement and safety tips, a lot of what Ashley already covered, but just kind of want to tie it into context on how we're all so important and part of this puzzle to getting these safety messages out to our community. But I am Kathy Wall with Safe Kids Palm Beach County. We are a program of community partners of South Florida, and we are graciously funded by the Children's Services Council. And our work as Safe Kids is really has to do with our coalition. And we could not do the work that we do without our coalition partners and members. So thank you, TPA, Healthcare District, all of our partners that participate with our safety campaigns. Because our mission is to keep all kids safe from preventable injuries. And we do that through talking about safety education in and around cars, our safety at play, safety around water, and safety at home. So we obviously tie this in with safety at play and our pedestrian safety programs that we do with schools and in the community, but how we can get riders to and from where they're going safely. So why it matters really is because we've seen this increase in growing popularity of bikes and e-bikes and scooters. If you think back, remember back COVID days, about 5 years ago, everybody was getting bikes. So we had more bikes on the streets and on our roads. Now with the popularity of these e-bikes and e-scooters, more and more of those are out on the roads. So we know it's a growing popularity, which is a great thing for us physically and mentally. But safety, we have some concerns. We're vulnerable road users. If you have a bike or a scooter versus a vehicle, guess who's going to win? The vehicle, just about each and every time. We want to wear those helmets, but still, if you're having a vehicle versus a bicycle, there's some inequity there. We also want to talk about some of the local impacts, like how does this affect our families and our kids? And so you'll spot some things not so perfect in our pictures, but mom should have one on too. But really, how are we going to get this messaging out to families, to single riders, to adults, to kids, and make this message so important? And that's our goal, really, to reduce the injuries, to promote safe riding habits, create this culture of respect between riders and vehicles, and how drivers and pedestrians can interact with each other. So it's all really, when we talk about safe kids, we're also talking about adults and drivers, but really our kiddos are our most vulnerable, especially if we're putting them on bicycles or walking, on our streets. They just don't have the judgment. They don't have the age and the developmental level to just judge the speed of cars, to also discern some peripheral vision, also some different hearings. They don't have, they're coming from different directions, where sound's coming from. The biggest misconception is that adults are looking out for them. While we think that that's the case and that's in our hearts, but we're distracted drivers. We aren't always paying attention. So we want to have kids know that maybe necessarily drivers or adults aren't always looking out for them, and they need to be looking out for themselves. Ashley touched it, we do. We want to make eye contact at intersections, make sure they see you and you see them. It's just a level of communication. But also it's that feeling of invincibility, that first time you rode your bike away from the house, your parents let you ride around the block, stay on the sidewalk, around the block. Just that invincible power that you have. So now if you amplify that now with these e-bikes and e-scooters, it gets a little scary and it's a little dangerous for our kids. So we talk about different engagement strategies, and again, I have to just promote and toot the horn of the coalition. It's not Safe Kids, and we're blessed. We have 4 staff, with Safe Kids Palm Beach County, but it's really the hundreds of Safe Kids Coalition members and programs that are out in Palm Beach County spreading the word. So our work with the school district is so important. They participate in the walk to school each year, walk and roll to school. So October 8th will be our walk to school. And then we also have a bike to school day that we like to coordinate with them for elementary schools. And they'll plan ways like, okay, we're going to meet in this parking lot of this church or this shopping center, and then we're going to ride into school together. It's a great way to promote bike riding or walking to school, a great way to promote helmet safety. So we love working with our school district for that. Also, our partnerships with law enforcement and community centers and neighborhood groups. Anybody who has access to families or kids who may be on bikes, that's who we want to partner with. And having all those partners, the community centers, the rec centers on board, are great locations to get out and get bike safety and helmet information out to. We love working with the TPA because of them. They help educate us on our bike lanes and our crosswalks. They do walk audits to look at neighborhoods to see which is the safest way, what's not so safe in the neighborhood, but really engages the community and the neighbors, the schools, the local municipalities in being a part of the solution to help make neighborhoods, safer to walk and ride in. And then our public campaigns, it's our social media, it's our videos, it's our YouTube, but whether it's stop, look, and listen, no helmet, no ride, however we can keep these public campaigns going, these safety message going, that interest our families and parents and caregivers. Yep. So Brian touched a little on this and Ashley did as well, but just really kind of having people understand the difference between the pedal bikes and the e-bikes and the e-scooters. And it's really the difference in the range. And I think what's so important, especially as we're talking with our parents and caregivers that are considering e-bikes or e-scooters for their kiddos, is to look at the difference in the speeds. So that average pedal bike goes from 10 to 15 miles per hour. And that's what the helmets that we're able to distribute are rated for those pedal bikes. So when these bikes are getting up to 20 to 28 miles per hour or even higher, the helmets that we're providing for pedal bikes aren't necessarily going to be the safest for an e-bike or an e-scooter. So we want to, that's a new layer of education that when we're doing our helmet fittings and we're doing our education, is that parents are going to have to understand the difference in what their kids are riding and that they have the correct helmet when they're out. We know that helmets, Ashley, thank you for covering this. We want to keep our folks from going to see Ashley. So we know that helmets reduce head injuries by 48%, serious head injuries by 60%, and traumatic brain injuries by 53%. Are they 100%? No, but this is a lot better than not wearing anything at all. So this is our message to get out that these helmets are going to help reduce your head injuries and traumatic brain injuries and severe injuries and death. So our education is constant, it's consistent. We want to talk about clothing, wearing bright clothing, not baggy clothing, wearing shoes, closed-toed shoes, make sure nothing, is dangling that could get in the chains. We also want to be sure to educate about having a light kit that goes with your bicycle. This is one of my pet peeves. If you've seen, it's like if you're selling a bike, it doesn't come with headlights or the red light reflector lights. It's like buying a car without headlights or turn signals. So whatever. So we want to be sure that our bikes are equipped with these light systems on them. We want to make sure that they know from dusk to dawn that they have their lights on, and it's actually part of our state law. We want to make sure that our riders have the road safety basics, that they know that they're following the rules of the road. When they come to an intersection, they're expected to stop. When they come to a crosswalk or a lighted system, they're to follow the lighting system or the crosswalk instructions. So obeying all the traffic laws. And yes, it is the law under 16 to wear a helmet. So we want to make sure that our kiddos are wearing a helmet when they're riding. This one, we want to be sure that, you can't put double up and triple up kids on bikes, especially now. It may seem easier because I don't have to pedal. So if I use my e-bike or e-scooter, I can put more friends on there. That's not safe. They're not designated. There's only one seating position on that bicycle. So we want to follow that law. We want to talk with kids and families about checking up on their bikes, so the air, the brakes, the chains, be sure that everything's in good working condition. One thing that our subcommittee has talked about recently is we really want to get the education about the charging of these e-bikes and e-scooters. Are they using the charger that came with it, not a secondhand or off-market charger? Are they following the charging instructions? Does it recommend leaving it plugged in overnight or for days on end? So it's really important that we find out about these devices and make sure that families and kids are following the directions on how to properly charge them. So for our drivers, one thing we talk about is that we talked about kids, how they're vulnerable because their peripheral vision and their auditory is not all fully developed. But think about some factors that are new for us as drivers and bicyclists or walkers. Now with the electric vehicles, you can't hear them. If you're at an intersection and you're on your bicycle and a electric vehicle pulls up behind you, you may not hear it. So it's really important to be alert, not have your headphones in, not listening to a phone call, but really be alert and paying attention. Also, you can't really judge the speed. So if you're used to seeing a bicycle a block away and your mind is calculating that bicycle is 12 to 14 miles per hour, it's a lot different now that if you have a bicycle a block away, is it coming at you at 28 miles per hour? So your turning times may be off. So there's really a lot more awareness that we need to get out to drivers to pay attention. And as we talked about in the beginning, with the increase of bicycles and the increase of the interest in these e-bikes and e-scooters, there's more on the roads, especially with school just starting back. There's more kids that are going to and from school on their own. So be really alert, not only in school zones, in neighborhoods, because we know we have more kids on the road. Getting this information out, we do it with one-on-one. We do presentations similar to this. We'll actually do an event where we'll fit kids with helmets. These are just a few pictures, some different partners that might participate, the nonprofit, the school district, our law enforcement, our fire rescue, TPA. They're all fitters too. And so we get out there and get helmets on kids. So really it just depends. You want to first get certified as a helmet fitter, which is easy. Reach out to us at Safe Kids. We'd love to get you trained to fit those helmets. We have a great program in Florida that provides free helmets to families. So we can get you that situation so that you can order helmets and provide them at these events, one-on-one, small events, large events. Uh, you just want to make sure that you have lots of space, you have lots of volunteers, you have your helmets, you have your brochures, and you have your families notified that you're there to fit kids with helmets. So get that information out. You can have a little shopping list. We'd love to partner with you on what to bring, what to get together to do a successful event. We have been so blessed to have many, many successful events. Again, I want to thank just all of our partners who make these events possible with us. But you look at the faces of some of these kiddos and you can see maybe it's their first helmet or they're really proud of it. And just that whole time we're fitting the kids, it's really trying to engage with them about how proud you are of them for wearing their helmets. I love to celebrate our middle schools and high school students that are coming to us for a new helmet because I always tell them little kids are looking up to them. So when they wear a helmet, they're doing great messaging and public service to the younger kids behind them. So that's it. I really appreciate the opportunity. At Safe Kids, we're really lucky to be able to do the work that we do, and we couldn't do it without all of you. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. While we get our panelists up on our screen, I wanted to take the opportunity to kick it over to everyone attending out in the virtual world to see if you have any questions. So I haven't seen any pop up in the chat yet, but feel free to type those in and we'll try to get those answered. So while you are typing those, I'm going to have my team join me. So I've got Kathy, Ashley, Courtney, looking for Nicole. I think she should be on as well. And I did pre-share some questions with you all that I did want to give you a heads up about. But before I get to those, I wanted to open it up to Courtney and then Nicole just to see if you had anything you wanted to share about our presentation and moving forward. So if you have anything you'd like to say. So let's start with Courtney. Courtney, do you have anything you wanted to add about the presentation so far?
No, I thought it's been extremely well put together and informational. I found it very engaging when I did the evaluation of the city ordinances and really learned a lot of things. Some fun facts, and then some cities and municipalities that are really making sure that the people using their roadways are safer, including uh, Jupiter Island that requires flags on the back of their bicycles, and not even like a time for dawn to dusk, but like 30 minutes prior to that, or in rainy conditions for using the e-bikes and e-scooter, or especially the e-scooter. So I thought that was really, really interesting, and I think that anybody that's part of a city municipality wants to see it, you'll be able to share that research with them.
Absolutely. That would be really nice. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for leading that research, Courtney. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Nicole, anything that you wanted to add from the Village of Wellington's perspective?
I thought the presentation as well, Courtney said it best, is very informative, helpful to lead the discussion on municipalities like ours here in the village as we are looking to adopt ordinances to further make our pathways safer. And I did think the question that was raised by one of the participants about the uniformity of the state law and how municipalities are kind of now trying to piece what's best for their community. It is and would be nice. It kind of dovetails on the golf cart ordinance, comes to mind, and how they continue to refine that and mandated that a driver's license and a learner's permit is required. So I kind of see maybe this going in that direction where that becomes not just government ID, but specifically maybe a permit or driver's license requirement in the future. So we'll
Thank
stay
you.
tuned on that.
Yeah, that's great. So I do have two audience questions that came in. The first one that I'm going to ask Ashley to answer, and you might be able to answer this about your dashboard if there's any more detailed data that you can provide. But are there any statistics on where e-bike crashes are happening, intersections, side swipes, or is there a way to see geographically where crashes have occurred through the healthcare district data, being trauma data that might be a little bit more detailed so that the cities can use it?
Yeah, so our dashboard system is down as of yesterday, but we do have access to where in the county the large population of accidents are happening. I know one of the climbing ones is the Jupiter area, especially because as you go further into Jupiter, it gets a little more rural with more farmland and stuff. So it requires more trauma hawk, landing areas over there. But if you want to shoot me an email, we can, do a deeper dive if I can help anybody out in getting a deeper dive into the mapping of it.
Great. So reach out to us after the presentation. You know who you are, who asked the question. So we will definitely try to get that dashboard out to everybody. The next question is a question about scooters and their capabilities. So some scooters reach 35 to 40 miles per hour. And a few individuals have seen them on county roads. Are they allowed? So if anybody wants to answer, I will turn it over to you all after. My interpretation of the state statute is you can go to the definitions for Florida Statute 316003. A micromobility device is a motorized transportation device designed for individual use, which is typically 20 to 36 inches in width and 50 pounds or less in weight, and which operates at a speed of typically less than 15 miles per hour, but no more than 28 miles per hour. This term includes a human-powered and non-human-powered device, such as a bicycle, electric bicycle, motorized scooter, or any other device that is owned. So I would take that interpretation and try to come up with policy around devices which exceed either the micromobility device speed characterization of 28 miles per hour or the e-bicycle classification. But our reading of that is that would fall outside of the typical devices which are allowed. I don't know if it's the state or Nicole, if you want to respond to that and how you maybe enforce some of those things. Has that been something the village has done or the state has looked into?
I can't really speak for the e-scooters. We're still developing our ordinance there, but like on golf carts, we have set a 15 mile per hour limit on our pathways. So we've already set that, and we've seen that in other local ordinances. So we are expecting when we do our ordinance to also put the e-scooters and the e-bikes in that category where they would have to, and then that within that 15 mile per hour limit, and then enforcement will occur.
Great. Thank you. Okay. I am going to now take some liberty since we've gotten through the audience Q&A so far to just ask my team a few questions. And so since Kathy, you were the last speaker, I'll pick you to go first. And I'll ask you to just tell us what strategies have been proven to get children to wear a helmet on every ride, and specifically, what can we ask parents to do to make that helmet riding stick?
That's a great question. Well, I think the first thing is when you're working, talking to a kid and doing that helmet fitting is let them make it their own. So as crazy it is, if you have a line of 150 kids waiting for a helmet, but if they want the red or the blue or the silver, if that makes them, that makes them more their helmet, then we want to make that happen. We also encourage parents to let them, you know, decorate it or whatever. If they want to put stickers on it, they want to use a paint pen. We don't recommend putting their personal name on the outside of the helmet just for safety. But decorate it. If you want the helmet that's a mohawk, get the helmet that's a mohawk, whatever is going to be your buy-in. The other thing we do with kids a lot is that we'll kind of have a little conversation with them and ask them how many have a phone. And majority of kids are going to say they have a phone or a tablet or something. We ask them what's on it. And you'll get somebody else say an app or whatever. Don't know what's on your phone. And they'll say, I have a case, I have a cover on my case. Well, why? Because I don't want it to break. And so you'll go, oh, would you plan on breaking it? No, I don't. But if it drops, whatever. Oh, okay. And then they'll go, oh, I see what you're doing. So if you're going to protect your phone or your tablet, why wouldn't you protect your head? And then the other thing, Brian, like you said, what can we get parents or caregivers to do is role model. If you're riding your bike with your kids, if you're wearing a helmet, that's more of a message that, in our family, we value safety and we're all going to wear our helmets. So I would definitely, encourage that. And again, I just want to celebrate the older kids that are wearing helmets to what ambassadors they are and what a message they're showing little kids when they're wearing their helmets.
Thank you. Yep, giving them ownership and role modeling is a great response. Appreciate that, Kathy. I'm going to ask Courtney a question. Courtney, if you could tell us, the state's been doing such a wonderful job with encouragement and with enforcement, through their grants and other mechanisms. I'm curious, at your level, what can we do at the district to help curb risky behavior without relying too much on enforcement? Kind of what local partners have at their discretion. And then also, what do you wish that we had access to in terms of data beyond like the crash reports that we wish that we tracked and published more frequently?
Thank you. It's a great question. So I'm all about measurable human change. That's my big thing. And it's then finding out where our users are and how they're using these devices. And it varies depending on where they are. So there's a lot of tourist use in our coastal communities and our other tourist areas. So that's an opportunity to develop campaign and information to address where they're either renting them from a storefront or in the apps that are there and they're using them and providing out our information that may not know our state law and or city ordinances. Then there are areas where people are using these devices as their only and primary mode of transportation. They don't have a vehicle. This is where they're getting to work and school. They tend to be adults that are using them. So it's finding out in that area, do they know that they should be wearing a helmet and they need the education, or do they need the helmet and maybe need to be providing it because there isn't income to purchase a helmet on top of that. And then we have our parents that are buying the kids these devices, and so that parent education can really be used there along with child education, but it comes from the top down. Children mimic what their parents are using. So if the parent is out on the bike ride, they need to be wearing a helmet just like the kids do, because the kids want to be like mom and dad. That's why they have play kitchens growing up. They pretend to cook. So they mimic our parents' behavior. And so that's really, it's trying to figure out where we need to have our campaigns and make varying campaigns to reach our target audiences. In terms of data collection, we know what Ashley knows for trauma injuries, and we know what we know when there's an actual crash reported and we track that. But there's also this huge amount of information that we don't have access to. When parents bring a child into a walk-in clinic for a sprained wrist as a based, from an injury, when somebody falls off or is injured and fire rescue transports them, but they don't, have an emergency room and it doesn't get elevated to a trauma. So there's a lot of data, and that's really a boots on the street conversation I think we can have with our EMS providers and our local law enforcement that are witnessing what their problem is. Not that it's captured, because those key markers are not in all of our reporting systems for our first responders to be like crash, it involved e-bike, etc. It's working on it. They're changing it, and different cities need to adopt it. But really, our boots on the street is where we're going to get the best information in the reports from. And I think continuing to have them at our conversations, involving them in the CTST meetings to report on that is really going to be, it might not be data in terms of actual numbers, but it reports quantitative data versus qualitative data, to come in and really give us that information so we can then focus our education campaigns out there in the community.
Great answer. Yeah. And it actually gets to one of the campaign elements that Ashley is working on right now. So Ashley, you've been saved by the Q&A that I'm going to read off to you from your counterpart on our Vision Zero Advisory Committee. So from Fadi, is there any structured program to reach out to middle and high school students in coordination with school principals? So Ashley, I know that you've got something brewing in the background. So could you elaborate on the school program that you've launched this year in
Yeah,
partnership with the school district?
absolutely. So I've been working on a comprehensive class that would substitute a, gym class in the different middle schools and high schools, which would help educate on micromobility safety, but also include scenarios that require critical thinking in which, what safety precautions should I take? What is best practice? And so it's, try to be all inclusive of different safety tools that each child could use. And I've also had the help of Brian also in creating this presentation as well. And so I've been working with the school district to hopefully start implementing that class, hopefully within this school year. And if not, we'll aim for next year as well. But hopefully I'll be able to start, implementing that within the schools within this year.
Thank you. And before I ask my last question, Nicole, I just wanted to remind the audience, if you do have questions, please do try to put them into the chat. That's the most effective way for us to filter and kind of reach the best questions as possible. So for Nicole, I wanted to ask you a question since you're our local government representative and expert on the matter, although it's really hard for anyone to call an expert themselves an expert in micromobility. This is also new. But how has Wellington worked with its partners to develop a safe system that works for everybody, especially people without cars? We know that there's a lot of service workers, there's students, there's older driver or older adults who maybe can't drive anymore. And do you have like a first corridor or pilot policy or something that you want to co-design with everybody in the room to test out, and move forward as you're starting to develop your ordinance locally?
Yeah, so we actually started several years ago expanding our multimodal pathways. And it started with that golf cart ordinance adoption in 2022. And then we focused on a more comprehensive approach with the TPA and the Vision Zero adoption several months after we adopted the golf cart ordinance. So that kind of helped us provide, and so at that point, we're mandated to have a safe systems approach throughout the entire village. And we've been working towards that, and we have that in our capital plan. Part of our partnership in developing that Vision Zero plan was a task force made up of all of these individuals that we see here on the panel: FDOT, Safe Kids, the schools, the principals, our community representatives, HOAs. So we're always open and working closely with the TPA to see the trends, what's out there, and how we can foster these alternative forms of transportation, but obviously do it in a safe way where it's not a nuisance or a public safety concern. So it's that balance, and that's what we're working on, and we have been working on. And so a particular area in the village, I can't say. I just know it's happening throughout the village.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And if any of the panelists want to ask me a question, I'm happy to answer. I don't know if anybody has any like burning things that they wanted to shoot off and share with the team, but without that, we can wrap up and we can go to our break. So does anybody have any final questions, any closing thoughts that they want to share moving forward? Nicole, you want to start since you're off mute?
No, I appreciate being part of the panel discussion, and we'll look forward to implementing our ordinance here in the near future and working with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy, anything from your side that you wanted to close out with?
No, I just really appreciate you pulling this together, Brian, and I think it's a totally a team approach, and it takes all of us working together, and we're so blessed to have so many people to work with, and working together, we're going to get these safety messages out and keep folks from going to see Ashley.
Ashley?
Just thank you for having me. I'm grateful to work alongside all of you guys to help, continue bringing safety to our community. And if anyone would be interested in hearing the micromobility presentation and or receiving Stop the Bleed training in collaboration with the micromobility presentation, please let me know. I'd be happy to do so, but thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Ashley. Courtney?
No, thank you very much for having me. There's an amazing book. It says, "What do you do with an idea?" And the answer is you change the world. And I really would encourage the participants here to give us their ideas, your ideas, please. Whether you have the time, energy, and inclination to join our micromobility sort of task group that we have created, or you have an idea, you have a thought, please give it to us. We're looking at many different things. One of them is kind of doing a heat map, looking at our ordinances and, where our traumas are at, like high, very strong ordinances, low traumas, that kind of thing, if that's a correlation. But we are open to having ideas. We're happy to take them and vet them and see if we can work on them because there are 69 participants on here. Some of them look like they're a duplicate somewhere, but I really think that all of you are the ones that can help change the world with your idea. So please give it to us. Let Brian know, and we can add it to our mobility meetings. And again, if you would like to join in, let Kathy know. And from here, from District 4, we really would like to duplicate this effort with our Broward County MPO and Safe Kids and Trauma Center group and also our Treasure Coast. That way we're sort of universally looking at it and involved in it, and we're not just our one little Palm Beach County group.
That's wonderful. Great feedback. And I did see a couple of other MPOs on the call, Forward Pinellas. I do see Martin MPO, and if I'm missing anybody, I'm sorry. We do have a hefty list of participants. We appreciate that. We're happy to share any information. I do encourage you to please reach out to Kathy to get onto this Safe Kids Micromobility Subcommittee. We share all of the events that we participate in with one another. So if anyone's able to join an event that's kind of being held locally, maybe you didn't know about it. There's lots of things that happen all over the place in Palm Beach County. We're a big county. We have a lot of territory to cover. So any hands that we can get into the fray are very helpful. And we do appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody taking the time today to share their insights from the Village of Wellington, the department, the healthcare district, and from Safe Kids. We appreciate all of you. As a reminder, the slides are going to be posted online, so don't worry about that. We are going to take just a brief 15-minute break. The webinar is going to resume back at 11 o'clock. We're going to have Dwayne Carver from Kittleson and Associates and Nathan George facilitating discussion about designing for micromobility. So please do stay tuned, and we will see you in about 15 minutes. Thank you, everybody. Workshop/webinar. I appreciate everybody coming back to us today. We still have about 60 participants in the workshop, so we didn't lose very many. For our next session, where we're going to talk about designing for micromobility. So I'm going to ask my team if they could go ahead and bring up Dwayne Carver and Nathan George. I'll do just a really brief introduction for everybody. Dwayne is coming to us from Kittleson and Associates, but he has a proven track record of public service at the Florida Department of Transportation, where he served as in multiple capacities and multiple functions for the department, and really helped emphasize the need for context-sensitive design of our transportation system, which was a focal point for him. And I also am joined today by Nathan George, the principal multimodal planner for the Palm Beach Transportation Planning Agency on the multimodal team. So if I could get both of them up and spotlighted, I'd appreciate it. Dwayne, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're coming through great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And take it away, Dwayne.
Actually, I'm trying to see the slides. They were there and then they went away. So hold on just a second. Let me see if I can. All I have is our lovely faces. Let's see if we can get this sorted.
We'll make sure we get that right before we move along. We don't want to have to switch back. See, I can see Nathan and I can see
Do you see the
Dwayne.
slides? Because I don't see the slide.
I do see the slide, so just give me 1 second. And in your view, Melissa, are you also online? Can you see the slides?
Yes, I can see the slides. If we could just confirm that with everyone else as well, if you could let us know in the Q&A if you're able to see things, that would be helpful as well.
Okay, I'm seeing some responses come in that's saying yes, they can see the slides.
Yep, I've got
Dwayne,
it up as well.
There's a gallery view that I was using all morning, but when I
Yeah.
use it, it doesn't show the slides. It just shows us. So
maybe try changing the view on that gallery. If you could go to the
that's
top.
what I've tried
Yeah.
them all. So
Interesting. Can we stop sharing and try again? 1 second, Dwayne.
yeah, I'll try that. There it is. I see it now.
Wonderful. All right.
Okay, thanks. Great.
Your show, Dwayne.
Do I
Appreciate it.
do I have the slide controller or is someone else advancing?
You should have slide control, so go ahead and give it a
Great.
tap. See
Okay.
what happens.
All right. Well, excellent. Okay, great. Well, good morning. Sorry for that little interlude there, but thank you all for coming back to continue this really great discussion. And I also serve on the formerly as a member and now as staff to the statewide bicycle and pedestrian coalition that's run by the Florida Department of Transportation, and heard a lot of similar conversations taking place at that level as just what we were hearing this morning. The exciting thing to me for you is that whereas in the conversations that I'm hearing at the state level are mostly, wouldn't it be great if we could go do XYZ? You all are actually in a position where you can do some of these things. So you're actually in a position to operate some of this stuff on the ground and actually make some of these things happen, which I think is very exciting. So let me tell a little bit about myself, so they might explain why they thought you might be interested in having me come and talk with you this morning. Prior to coming to Kittleson and Associates, I'm an associate planner here. I'm in Tallahassee. My area of practice includes bicycle and pedestrian design and planning, as well as context-based design and speed management and some roadway design stuff as well. Prior to that, I was at the Florida Department of Transportation, and I started there in 2013 as the state bicycle pedestrian coordinator. At that time, we had moved the bike ped coordinator position out of the safety office into the design office. And I came from a design background and also from a bicycle instruction background. And so we were working very carefully to retool a lot of the way our approach to bicycle facility design was done at the state level, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through here. But I was able to be a part of that, and that really got me interested and excited about working with communities to improve their bicycling conditions, or conditions for bicyclists, I should say. And so I've been able to carry that through now into my practice. So thank you for inviting me to come and speak to you, and hopefully we'll all enjoy this conversation. What I've got for you this morning is some slides, but not so much presentation, kind of dog and pony show, more maybe an opportunity to have some conversations. Nathan is here as well. He's going to jump in and provide color commentary, and I think partly help me make sure that as I'm talking, we keep things tied down to your local concerns and the issues that you deal with every day in your community. So I was formerly a league cycling instructor. I did not keep that up while I was at the department. Did not have the time to put into that, but my wife and I used to teach the League of American Bicyclists league cycling classes. Also, I was a cycling savvy instructor. If you're not familiar with cycling savvy, it's kind of a um, bicycle transport or bicycle education program that's more focused on traffic bicycling, very focused on that. And so I also did a lot of that kind of stuff. So in addition, I've done bicycle touring, been a commuter, and also an instructor. So a lot of great discussion this morning, and I was hearing a lot of things that are familiar as we went through this discussion this morning. Okay, and if we're going. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay. So the question that kind of brought us all here is what are we going to do with all these e-bikes? We've had bicycles for years. Bicycles have been around since the 19th century, and the earliest ones even way before that. But now we've got these new bicycles, these new e-bikes, and for a long time, folks are like, "Well, what are we going to do with that?" I mean, it goes really fast, and it seems heavier, and how are we going to design around that? And there's a lot of issues with those things, we think. But we are beginning to understand them better now. One of the things I want to go over with you this morning is some of the latest information from the AASHTO Bike Guide. If you're not familiar with AASHTO, it is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, which is a mouthful, which is why we just say AASHTO. There is another organization that may be more relevant for what you're doing, and it's called NACTO, and it's the National Association of City Transportation Officials. And Brian mentioned that they had been at that conference just recently, and your community there is very active in NACTO, and that's a good thing because NACTO is much more focused on what's happening at the city and street level, maybe more than at the highway level, which is where AASHTO is coming from. The good thing about AASHTO is the national standard. All state DOTs understand it. If you can show that it's an AASHTO, it's a lot easier to get your stuff done. So I wanted to see what AASHTO had to say about these e-bikes. I'll share some of that with you this morning. We talked a little bit this morning already about the evolving regulation and practice around e-bikes, and I thought those are very instructive to hear what's going on. I've been trying to follow it myself, and even I didn't have a really good idea of what was happening at the state level with all the different regulations and laws that they've come out. And I thought Brian and your other speakers did a great job explaining that and sort of how it fits into your local community. And all that got me thinking, when we talk about e-bikes, are they really that different from the same problems that we have with other types of bicycles and the same issues that confront them? So I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. And as we go through, we'll have some thoughts and observations to kind of go over that. So when we think about designing for something, we need to think about what it is we're designing for, what are its physical characteristics, what is its performance parameters and things like that. So here's what we know about e-bikes that make them different from regular bicycles. And I say e-bikes, this would include scooters, it would include one wheels, basically anything that's using this electric motor apparatus to drive a wheel of some kind. I'm going to fall in here. It's all this micromobility. So same idea. We're basically enhancing human performance by using these electric motors. So one thing that we know is that they have much faster acceleration. So that makes it easier to achieve and maintain these higher speeds, 20 to 30 miles an hour. You can do 20 to 30 miles an hour on a conventional bicycle. I was telling Nathan yesterday, I got up to, I think, 42 one time, but that was going down a volcano in Hawaii. And it's not something that I do on a regular basis on a regular bicycle, but you can achieve speeds in that range very easily with an e-bike, even without being a trained person. Normally, you have to be very highly trained to get to those kind of speeds and maintain them. Not anymore. We know that the e-bikes are easier to start. This is kind of a big deal because we have a lot of issues with cyclists running red lights and stop signs because once you slow down on your bike, it's kind of a pain to get started again. So this may be a good thing. It makes it easier to start and stop on your e-bikes. One thing that I really like about the e-bikes is that they have lights. And one of the speakers earlier was talking about the importance of having lights on the bicycles. And we used to sit around and talk about, well, if we could do one thing that would make bicycling safer in Florida, what might that one thing be? And one of the things that was usually pretty close to the top of the list was we would love for all the bicycles to be lighted at night. That would help so much because crashes are overrepresented at night. And if we just felt like if folks could see people on their bicycles, that would really help a lot with that problem. And now we can. E-bikes actually have those lights on there. So that could be very helpful for us. We also know that the e-bikes are heavier. They've got these batteries and motors on them, so they're much heavier than most bicycles, although A lot of bikes can get heavy. We'll talk about that too. Are they less maneuverable? Maybe they may be a little less maneuverable in some ways. And so that might be something that would be a design characteristic that we would need to think about. And Nathan, I know you have an e-bike and you ride it regularly, so feel free to jump in at any time with things that I'm sort of pulling stuff out of the AASHTO guide. But if you have local knowledge and use experience that you want to share, that's fine as well. So
Yeah, actually, if you could go back to the
yeah,
previous slide really quickly. Just to react quickly to a couple of your comments. Brian and I both ride long-tail e-bikes that we can ride with a child on the back. So they're designed and equipped with seats for up to 2 passengers. And those bikes are less maneuverable. So that is something that we used to design to accommodate a bicycle towing a trailer. That used to be kind of the common design vehicle. Today, we've got a wide variety of different vehicle types, cargo bikes with perhaps a box in the front, might be a trike with a box in the front. Those do have maneuvering challenges. If I ride my bike with my kids to school, I need to ride in the street because I can't navigate the sidewalk environment because I can't maneuver as efficiently. So there are some considerations there as we're thinking about maneuverability. And you mentioned earlier about if there was one thing you could change, you'd add lights to bikes. If I could change one thing, I would take throttles away. That's something that we don't have the authority to do. And it certainly is helpful when I have 100 pounds of extra cargo in the form of my children on the back of the bike. But it's certainly something that I see a lot of abuse. And that if I could improve safety by making one change, I would require manufacturers to remove that device and make it that you must pedal. So what we refer to as pedelec or pedal assist, e-assist, that would be a huge improvement in safety. That's something that's regulated by the Consumer Product Safety Commission, or CPSC, which came up a little bit earlier, I believe. And so that's something that we don't really have the ability to do anything about, but it is something that certainly makes it a little bit more challenging that somebody could ride at 20 or 28 miles an hour, potentially with very limited support by their pedaling.
That's a good point. And would you say that it's one of the things that is really to me, it's a big game changer between just having an electric assist bike versus a quite different vehicle with the throttle. The very earliest bikes were just single speed. They were direct drive. And everybody was like, well, that's what a bicycle is like. And if you wanted to change gears, you actually took the bicycle wheel off, flipped it around, and you had a different set of gears on the other side. So now you had 2 speeds. Well, then they came up with a derailleur, and people were like, well, that's crap, because now you can have a bunch of different speeds. That's not really bicycling. Real bicycling only has 1 speed. But so we keep making changes to the bicycle to make it more efficient to use it to get more power with less energy input. So to me, when they introduced these electric drive motors, I just thought of it like a really efficient gearing system. Does that make sense? So to me, that wasn't necessarily cheating in any way. It just meant that I could now use a bicycle in a way that was even easier than before. It's still a bicycle. I still pedal it, and my pedal power gets translated into some kind of motion. It's just very efficient. But when you add that throttle to it, Nathan, you're right. When you add that throttle to it, now it becomes a different animal in some ways. It's more like a little motorcycle. And maybe that is a big difference. So that's a good point. AASHTO does not necessarily, this is the AASHTO guide for the development of bicycle facilities. It's not a cheap document, but you can purchase it, and your local government, I'm sure, has a copy of it. If you work with bicycle stuff on a regular basis, it might not hurt you to have a copy of this kicking around, and it goes into a lot of detail on these things. So I wanted to see what the new AASHTO bike guide, this just came out in 2024, had to say about these e-bikes. I'm like, there must be a lot of good stuff in here about e-bikes and how we're going to fix this problem with the e-bikes, because they've been thinking about it for years. What do they have to say about it? I was a little underwhelmed. What they basically said is that it's a bicycle, guys. And it's a little different from other bikes. But here's the thing. In the AASHTO Green Book and the Bicycle Facilities Guide, it talks about a lot of other bikes that aren't necessarily e-bikes, cargo bikes. Nathan just mentioned he used to take his kids to school on a long bike. I used to take my son to school on a tandem. I had a tandem with one kid on it, and then I had a bicycle seat on the back of the tandem that had another kid on it. And so I was taking 2 kids to work on a tandem, and it was an electric bike. It was not an electric bike. And so yeah, it made it very interesting how you maneuver a bike like that and getting off the roadway onto the sidewalk to turn into the school. Yeah, the kids would tell me sometimes, Dad, we cut a little close there. Can we maybe not take that turn quite as fast next time? And so, yeah, maneuverability is an issue, but that's not unique to e-bikes. It turns out that's actually an issue with a lot of different kind of bikes. So here's some of the ones they have in AASHTO. They've got cargo bikes, tricycles, recumbents and recumbent tricycles, tandem bicycles. There's a lot of different kinds that are described in there. And my thought reading is that, wow, e-bikes are not the weirdest thing in this box of cereal. There's a lot of different kind of bicycles out there. Maybe we don't have to just focus on e-bikes. Maybe we just need to focus on the general idea of bicycles as a vehicle that has a wider design envelope than maybe a lot of us are used to thinking about with a bicycle. Um, but they do have some special design considerations, but then a lot of these other bikes do as well. And I think the AASHTO approach is that if you design for all these different kinds of bikes, you're going to pick up the e-bike issues as well. Taking the throttle issue out of it, Nathan, as you said, that is kind of a special thing that we might need to think about. So saying the e-bikes accelerate faster, you can get to those higher velocities more easily, and they do recognize that they're a little heavier than conventional bikes. Having said that, you put any bicycle, take any bicycle, add a couple of kids to it, add some groceries, add 20 or 30 pounds of touring gear, you've got a heavy bicycle. And so again, it's not unique that e-bikes are heavier. They just are heavier than most people encounter on a regular basis. But regular bicyclists, people who bicycle a lot, frequently encounter quite heavy bicycles under these conditions, even before e-bikes came along. So again, that's not necessarily unique to those. It's not all troublesome. Some of the stuff that's on the e-bikes is actually pretty helpful. The idea of the faster acceleration, that's really not a bad thing at all. When we teach bicycling classes, we teach you how to, when you stop, to position your pedals so that you can accelerate quickly when you take off again. We also teach you to downshift on the way to the stop. If you stop in high gear and have to start again, that's a tricky situation, but we can teach you how to deal with that. But we do all that because acceleration is very important from a stop. Let's say if you're at a traffic signal, for instance, you need to get going in a hurry when the traffic signal changes, that kind of thing. So, acceleration is a good thing. So that's universally, we think, good about any kind of bicycle. Better acceleration is better. You're getting more motion with less energy. And we taught a cycling savvy class a few years ago here in Tallahassee. You may not realize it, but Tallahassee has hills. And we were humping it up this hill as part of our test course at the end of the class. We went out and rode on the street, and folks were getting experience with that. And I was huffing and puffing up the hill. I was the instructor, and the guy next to me was just kind of tootling along. He was talking, just having a nice conversation. And that's when I remembered he was the guy who brought his e-bike. His company actually was selling some of the early e-bikes, and he had ridden one to the class, and that's what he was using. So yeah, way easier to move around and use less energy. That's very attractive to a lot of folks. And I think it could actually open up bicycling as a transportation option to way more people. How many folks want to get to work and you're drenched in sweat and you're breathing hard and your heart rate is up? And yeah, you had a good workout on the way to get there, but maybe that's not really what you're there for. You're just trying to get to work. And if you could avoid some of that by using this other type of vehicle, that's not a bad thing. So more motion with less energy, that's not a bad thing. I already mentioned the fact that they have lights. I'm going to mention it again because I think it's just really awesome that they do have these lights. And this could actually be a real problem solver for a lot of our nighttime crashes. And nighttime crashes are bad ones for bicyclists, usually speaking. And also, they do have this greater carrying capacity, even for the same size load that you've got. If you have an electric assist motor on there, your life is going to be a lot easier. I had a pedal cycle that we would use going up the or trailer cycle on the back of a bicycle, taking my son to school. I could always tell when he was pedaling and when he wasn't. And I would be like, son, you got to pedal back there. You can't just be along for the ride. And I could always tell when he was doing that. So having that additional gearing and additional motor assist on that does help a lot with the carrying capacity. So those are all good things.
Jumping into real quick with a little color commentary there,
Yeah.
because when I was in private practice, I practiced in Washington, D.C. We were ground zero for the launch of all of these dockless systems.
Yeah.
The system that I used most commonly was Jump. And I did exercise that opportunity to ride across town in full business gear. So I'm dressed in, call it business casual, from my office about 3 miles to go to a meeting in the middle of summer. Anybody who's been to DC in the summer knows it's very similar to South Florida. It's very hot, humid. We call it hazy, hot, and humid there. And it was very comfortable to ride on an e-bike. One of the challenges I had was the bike was not equipped with something to actually hold my gear in place. On one of my rides, I actually lost my bag with my computer in it. So there are certainly compromises that you need to consider as a rider. Like, I'm going to ride faster, but I may hit a bump and it might toss some of my gear. But it certainly did help with, I can ride an average everyday gear. I can arrive comfortably and go to a meeting with government officials and not feel like I look like a haphazard bicyclist. So there are some true benefits, but also some considerations you need to take as a rider to adjust your riding style or make sure that you have the appropriate equipment with you so you can make that trip.
Yeah, when my wife and I would teach the League of American Bicyclists bicycle commuter course, they had a half-day course you could do for just geared around bicycle commuting. And a big part of the course was, how do you clean up when you get there? And you got to wipe all the sweat off and go wash off in the sink in the bathroom and everything like that, and kind of get your body temperature back down before you go to the meeting or whatever. This gets rid of a lot of that. The thing that you specifically mentioned that was an issue was losing your bag because you were going faster than you had expected on your bike. And I think that is the thing also on this slide here that that AASHTO is really, when you read the AASHTO guide and kind of see what they're really talking about, where the problems are, it is the speed. And the speed is something that's going to help and hurt. It helps because you can get there way faster with less effort, right? That's a good thing. But then it introduces these other issues as well. You hit a bump at 10 miles an hour is one thing. You hit that same bump at 15 or 20 or 25, you've got a different problem perhaps. And so that's just one example where the speed is an issue. So these bikes cruise at, I'm going to say 15 to 20 miles an hour. If you're using the throttle, certainly you can go even faster. A normal bicycle, a non-electric bicycle, in my practice, I used to spend a lot of time with a radar gun. And so I would just shoot bicyclists with the radar gun whenever they were out and about, just to get an idea how fast they were traveling. Pretty uniformly, they travel at about 12 miles an hour. That's just an average person in shorts, maybe delivering a pizza or something, just kind of riding around on a bicycle. That was about how fast they went. And so that's a pretty decent, I think, assumption for a speed for just an average bicyclist. That's below the rate that the e-bike's going to be moving just to get up and be moving around on the e-bike. You're going to be going faster than that. And so that's kind of something to think about. Certainly 15 to 20 is way too fast for sidewalk riding. Most sidewalks are between, let's say, 5 and 8 feet wide. And I used to explain to folks that a sidewalk is designed for a pedestrian. Let's assume the pedestrian moves at 3 miles an hour, which is maybe a pretty good clip for some pedestrians. But still 3 miles an hour. To be on a bicycle on level ground, just to ride fast enough that you don't fall over and get all wobbly and stuff, you're going to be going about 6 miles an hour. So basically you're exceeding the design speed of that sidewalk, if you will, by about 100%. So you might say that's kind of like going 50 down a 25-mile-an-hour road, perhaps, or 30 on a 15. So you're going way faster than that facility was designed for. That's just a conventional bicycle. And so on an e-bike, you're going even faster than that, not even necessarily meaning to. That's just how fast you're driving because you're just pedaling at a comfortable pace. So this is definitely an issue. This is definitely where a lot of the problems are going to come in, is this speed differential that we have here. This speed at 15 to 20 is a good speed for a shared use path if you actually keep it at that speed and don't go much faster than that. But most shared use paths are designed at about 18 miles an hour as the design speed. But for urban bike facilities where you're not expected to go as long before you have to stop and things like that, those may be designed much lower speed at 10 or 12 miles an hour. And so it's usually outside the design speed for those facilities as well, not just the path, but if you have a separated bike lane or a protected bike lane or one of these new facility types that's come around in the last 10 years or so, those are usually also designed at less than 15 miles an hour. And so these e-bikes are beginning to become, they're basically faster than we designed it to go. or they will go faster than we designed it for. So it exacerbates a lot of these issues. And we already had issues on shared use paths with people wanting to get out and ride on the shared use path to get their exercise in. How fast can I go? That's what I always say when I get on a shared use path. So you put your head down, you go as fast as you can. The shared use path is not really that wide, 10 to 12 feet. I've got kids on little bikes. I've got people jogging. I've got people pushing kids, all kinds of things going on, people walking dogs, a lot of stuff going on the shared use path. Not a great environment to mix high speed differentials like that in the first place. Now I've got the e-bikes included in that. Not a good scene. And one of our, I forget who it was exactly. I was taking notes, but I don't have them in front of me. Was mentioning the fact that you are actually having enforcement issues on, or you're having to enforce some of these speeds on your shared use path. So you know what I'm talking about. I suspect that was really an issue even before the e-bikes come along, and now it's really gotten even worse now that we have these bikes out there. So there's some other problems, and Nathan, this is one you alluded to yesterday, was this issue with riding the throttle. Basically, you're using it kind of like a moped, particularly in the suburban environments where you can get up to higher speed, and we have a mix of different uses there. You got all the regular bicycle conflicts that you normally have, but faster. And this was something that I thought was interesting listening to Ashley's presentation on the crashes that we've seen. What I noticed is that when you were describing, Ashley, the kinds of crashes that you were experiencing and seeing in the trauma centers and things, honestly, those are the same crashes we've been seeing since I've been involved with bicycling. You're seeing broken collarbones, you're seeing broken wrists from people falling and trying to catch themselves, head injuries from people who are not wearing helmets, broken hips are not unheard of, broken thighs, things like that. So what was really striking about your numbers, though, was how many more of them there are. So what's really accelerating is that there's more of these kinds of crashes. So it's similar to the kind of crash problem we've had in the past, but there's more of it. And so it's happening faster. And that, I think, is a result of the speed. And when I was thinking about the bicyclists listening to, and the e-bikes listening to the conversation this morning, was that it's kind of the same problems we've had. And in an e-bike, you can get yourself into the same problems you can get into on a conventional bike. You can just do it faster. And normally when you add more speed to something, you're adding more energy to it. That's usually not a good thing in a trauma situation, right? You want to try to reduce the energy that's involved in the crash as much as possible. This is going the opposite way and accelerating that. The other thing that Nathan pointed out that you're having yesterday he pointed out was this issue with the pedestrians or other micromobility devices being struck. So you're running into pedestrians. You have situations with people on these devices that are running into cars, and that did happen some. I think it's happening more. People aren't used to going as fast as you can actually go on here. They're not trained for it. They're not expecting it, and they don't realize how much time it might take to stop. It's easy to overestimate that. I remember when I first started riding a bicycle to work, taking a turn off of the road. There was a truck behind me. I was trying to get off that road, so I took the turn a little fast. I was surprised how much room it took me to curve out of that turn when I took it. I had to actually swoop all the way across the other street. Fortunately, it was a quiet local street. There was not a big deal to do that. But I was a little surprised by how much room it took me to make that turn at the speed that I was going, and got me to realize, hey, you better figure out what you're doing on this bicycle. You're going to get hurt, and learn better what the operational how it operates when I'm using it at different speeds. And so those are things that folks just haven't learned, I think, on these micromobility devices, and we're seeing it in the kind of crashes that we're having. All right, Nathan, I want to just kind of stop there for just a second and make sure that you think we've kind of covered a lot of the stuff that you guys are seeing as far as the issues that are arising specifically from the e-bikes. I want to go in now to start the next part, talking a little more about how we might address some of this. But I want to make sure we've kind of covered a lot of the bases that we need to cover. Is there anything you can think of that we're leaving out, or?
I'll go ahead and kick it over to Brian because I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I just unmuted just really quick because we did get a question
Yeah.
at about 20 minutes ago that I wanted to make sure we answered.
Okay.
So given vehicles are electrifying, and in innovation and people talking about vehicle to vehicle technology, so cars speaking to one another, potentially bikes speaking to one another to help prevent collisions. Are there any discussions about vehicle-to-vehicle technology for bicycle safety to make those vehicles more digitally visible to drivers or the road system itself?
There is a little bit of talk about that. That comes up at the statewide level with some of their stuff with the coalition meetings sometimes. And the Department of Transportation, FDOT, was looking very heavily into automated and connected vehicles a few years ago. The notion is you can have entire connected intersections. And so the traffic signals are talking to the cars are talking to the traffic signals, the cars are talking to you on with your phone. I mean, they know where your phone is. They can track all these things. And so it is possible to you can imagine a world in which it's possible without too much imagination, to have all these things kind of talking to each other. Yes, you can do that. What I would say is might keep that from being quite as quite the killer app that we think it might be, has to do with predictability. Because what we saw when the department was trying to make the roadways suitable for automated vehicles. So, the Teslas could all drive themselves down the street, things like that. What we found was that automated vehicles actually do work really well in very controlled environments. And so if I have a thing that has very clear pavement markings and the road is designed the way it's meant to be designed and everything that works the way that the computer is expecting, it actually works really well. And the car will drive itself in that condition. But as soon as you throw a traffic cone out there or an orange barrel or something like this, those things kind of lose their minds, and you're not really sure what they're going to do. That unpredictability it seems to have a confounding effect on these automated and connected devices. So let's say it can talk to your scooter, or let's say it can see where your scooter is. If you are operating that scooter in a way that is unpredictable, you're dodging out from between parked cars, you're crossing an intersection at a place where it wasn't expected that you would. The car is waiting on a traffic signal that gets a green and is ready to go, and then somebody shoots across the front of it. Those kinds of things it may still have trouble with. So I don't know that just being able to talk to you and know where you are is necessarily going to fix all the problems. It would help, but there may still be issues with people are not actually behaving in a kind of predictable way. I drive a Subaru. It has the eyesight system. I have been in it when it operated, and it has kept me out of crashes before. And supposedly it would stop if it saw a pedestrian. I've never had that happen before, but had it stop for other cars. But as those things come online, I have a lot more confidence that we'll be able to avoid some of the crashes that we're seeing when motorists are hitting these vehicles. Maybe also for the vehicles hitting cars too. So if my scooter also knows where the car is, maybe the scooter applies its own brakes before I get there, or governs itself so I cannot go as fast. That would all be great. So yes, I have seen some of that out there. It is possible that it could work. I've not seen anybody actually put all the pieces together in the right way. Part of the problem is that all this is proprietary. So the cars are using one system, the bikes are using a different system, the traffic signals are using a different system. Getting all those things to talk together it continues to be an issue. So did that get the question, Brian?
Yeah, if I could just chime in really quickly, because I do want to keep us moving, but this is an issue that we were looking at one of the cities I worked with through a transportation systems management and operation, or TISMO kind of approach, where there are questions about the proprietary nature of the vehicle. So what is the vehicle communicating, and what sorts of technologies are involved in data sharing, all those issues. But there's also the opportunity for us to leverage our investments in things like signal technology so that it equips our infrastructure to communicate with the vehicles. We were testing as part of our deployment of emergency vehicle preemption, so allowing fire and rescue to communicate with signals. There's some technologies where you have apps on your phone. We were looking at Glance Travel Sense is the name of the app. And how could that allow your phone to communicate? So not talking about your micromobility device, but actually just having your phone basically be a beacon that identifies you out in the world. And so there are a number of ways that we might see this deployed. We're going to see some kind of consensus build around how we improve safety through some kind of technology solution. But it's going to take us probably the next decade to start to solidify even what direction that's going to take. So it's certainly something that falls more in the operations side of the house, and it will find its way into vehicle technology, and it may find its way into micromobility vehicle technology. But we'll have to see how that evolves within the industry. So I do think it's an important acknowledgement, but excited to move into the engineering side next.
Yeah. Well, and I think what that's really looking for is something that all of us have been looking for a long time, which is, is there the silver bullet that's going to solve all this for us? Technology is going to fix all this for us, and we won't have to actually do any planning or engineering or education or other things. And what we find is that it can help. It will certainly help, and it makes things a lot better in many ways. But we still have to do a lot of this other work that comes into it. So, what I was going to suggest is that as you're thinking about this, what AASHTO is really pointing us toward is don't get overly fixated on the notion that it's an e-bike problem. It's not really an e-bike problem. It's a bicycle problem. It's a micromobility problem. We also have unelectrified scooters, for instance, and we have skateboards and all kinds of things people have been riding around on for years. Again, I'm going to lump them all under bicyclist here, but everywhere you see bicyclists, you can kind of imagine other types of users that might be doing that. So traditionally, and it's worked traditionally because it works, and that's why we keep doing it. We can kind of break these things into thinking about these we call the 4 E's: engineering, education, enforcement, and encouragement. And what I would encourage folks to do is to think about it not so much as an e-bike problem, but think about it: how does my city, how does my community itself become more bicycle friendly? And when we think about bicycle friendly, I wanted to share with you this graphic from the AASHTO guide, which talks about what they're calling a comfort typology of bicyclists. And if you've not seen this before, I want to kind of go through it really quickly just so you understand what it's saying. When we talk about bicyclists, when I say bicyclists, different things come to different people's minds. Some folks imagine somebody in spandex, slamming it down the highway at 20 miles an hour, maybe with a pack of 30 other people, and they're all blocking traffic and everybody's really mad about it. That may be one type of bicyclist. You may also be thinking about someone who's just wearing street clothes and they're just, trying to ride to get to work or to get to the library. You may be thinking about kids on bikes. So there's a lot of different kinds of bicyclists out there. And for many years, and this is where we started when I was at FDOT, the idea was that a bicyclist basically was a middle-aged guy riding a road bike, and they understood how to ride in traffic and they were comfortable doing that, and we're going to give them a bike lane and they're going to be happy and everybody's going to be happy and it's going to be fine. And that's really all it takes. This study was done a few years later, and it went out and said, well, now how do people really feel about bicycling? What kind of folks bicycle? And they divided bicycling, if you will, into these markets, in these different kind of market groups. And I want you to notice down here at the bottom, there's actually quite a few of these. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse or not, but I'm circling this one. It says 31 to 37% under non-bicyclists. At any given time, part of our population is not going to be bicycling. They're not interested in bicycling. They can't bicycle, or they used to bicycle and now they don't, or maybe someday they will when they grow up and get big enough to do it. But they're just not going to be doing that. And so as we were thinking about how we take care of bicyclists, we've also always got to keep that in the back of our mind. We could reshape our entire transportation system and make it work absolutely perfectly for bicyclists. We just have to remove all the automobiles and all the stuff that we've dumped into that. I think a lot of people would push back against that. And so these people are there. You got to keep them in mind as you're working about it. But let's take them off the table for a second. The largest group of folks that they identified, this 51 to 56%, are folks who were interested but concerned. These are people who really maybe don't think of themselves as bicyclists, but they will ride a bicycle if they feel safe doing so. They will ride a bicycle if they go to Key West on vacation, and they'll wear flip-flops and a straw hat, and then they'll ride a bicycle and carry a beer in the other hand and ride around, and they'll be happy doing that. So those are the interested but concerned folks. They probably know how to ride a bicycle, but they don't do it that often. Are they going to ride in a bike lane? Maybe. Kind of depends on the bike lane. If it's a conventional 4-foot bike lane, probably not. They might ride in a swooshier bike lane if they had one. But they're just not going to be the ones out front doing that. Up from that a little bit are folks who want to ride a bicycle. Maybe they're committed to it. They bought a good bicycle. They're thinking, wow, I could ride my bike to work and I could save some time, save some money, maybe lose some weight and stay in shape. And so they're interested in that. And but they only want to ride where there is a facility that they feel comfortable riding on. Maybe a separated facility, maybe a very slow road with the right things drawn on it to make them feel comfortable doing that. That's a much smaller percentage of folks. The smallest group actually is this highly comfortable, highly confident group. Those are the folks who understand how to ride in traffic. They can ride their bicycle anywhere. And that was who we used to only design for. And now we've realized that that's really a very small part of our population. Shouldn't we be designing for the other folks as well? And so as we think about how we design and model our cities and our communities to accommodate bicycling, it's helpful to think about these different groups and think what's going to work for all of these different folks. The highly confident folks will ride everywhere. I don't know that we really need to worry too much about them. They're going to ride their bikes. They know how to do that. It's the somewhat confident and the interested but concerned that we're thinking about. And keep in mind, these are not static groups. A non-bicyclist may become a bicyclist. Someone who's interested or concerned may discover they really enjoy bicycling and want to do more of it. They move into somewhat confident. I would hope that we could come back. Wouldn't it be great if we could come back in 20 years and these had changed a lot? And let's say there were more people who were somewhat confident and could ride in a wider range of conditions. That could happen if we design our communities to support it. So I'm going to go now quickly or kind of through these different engineering, education, and enforcement ideas. And mostly what I'm going to be doing now is just throwing some concepts out there for you all to think about. Put questions in the chat, respond to it. Nathan's going to respond maybe and have some thoughts on it as it goes along. So let's talk about those things. Engineering. I'm a designer, so this is kind of where I always come back to is, well, how do we make something, how we design something that's going to work? This blue chart was very helpful. It came out a few years ago from the Federal Highway Administration. It's now in the AASHTO Bike Guide. I want you to look at it kind of carefully. It's showing along the bottom axis is the speed of the roadway or the facility where you might find a bike facility. And up the upper axis, on the vertical axis, is the volume of traffic that you would have on that roadway. And where those things intersect, you get different kinds of conditions that are suitable for bicycling. And basically, the darker it is, the less suitable it's going to be for a larger number of people. Okay. So look down in the corner there where everything's very nice and clear. Below 2,000 cars a day, below 25 miles an hour. Most people are comfortable sharing a bike lane. That's your low-speed suburban residential situation. You probably have a lot of streets in your community now that might fit that description where folks can just ride in the street. And it may be even counterproductive to try to provide some kind of bike facility there. But as the speed and more particularly as the volume goes up, we would start wanting to see separation. It will be interesting to see how this might change based on e-bikes, actually, because before we used to say that about 20 miles of separation is the limit. So if a bicyclist is going, say, 10 miles an hour, my car is going 30 miles an hour, that's 20 miles. Any faster than that, it's not going to be good for me to put those things in the same street together. I want to start separating them. And you see that reflected here. Above 30, I start getting into bike lane territory. Really, this shows it above 25, start getting into bike lane territory. And as the volume goes up, that changes a little bit as well. With an e-bike, if I can cruise on my e-bike at 15 to 20 miles an hour, does that range of where I'm comfortable actually go up a little bit? I don't know. Maybe interesting to see, but that's something that might change a little bit based on the engineering parameters there. But this is one of the things that you can use to start thinking about, well, do I already have streets in my city that may be suitable for bicycling? This is a good place to start to have that kind of conversation versus maybe prioritizing other places where I really do need to have some other kind of a facility. An example of this that they show in the AASHTO Bike Guide are these bike boulevards. If you've had experience with a bike boulevard or use them in other places or have ideas about them and you want to write about it in the chat, that would be great to tell us what you think about them. Basically, a bike boulevard is a very low speed, very low volume roadway that has been optimized for bicycles. Cars can still use it. You can still drive on it. It's not a road that's been shut down for vehicles, but I might include things that will force the vehicles to go more slowly. Maybe I have some raised intersections. Maybe I have raised crosswalks. Maybe I have some vertical or horizontal deflection, little mini roundabouts. I might have a traffic diverter or something like that. There's different things you can do to these roadways to ensure that those vehicle speeds stay low. It also has a tendency to make people not want to drive on it, so it keeps the volumes low as well. But essentially, these can be routes that are already there in your town that you can enhance a little bit, and they might be suitable for getting kids to school. They might be suitable for a community bicycle route to just kind of get through your community to the library or the store or the park or wherever you need to go, the beach, whatever it might be. So those are bike boulevards, and I've seen these used effectively in other towns, and they are, I think, have a lot of merit. Keep in mind, for a e-bike that's moving at a higher speed, you need a higher speed facility. Well, what do we have that's already a higher speed facility? The street. The street is designed to operate at 20, 25, 30 miles an hour. The sight triangles are good. The clear zones are good. The lateral offsets are good. Everything's already been designed by a roadway engineer to make sure it works at that speed. And so why not put the bicycles there as well if I can manage the interaction with the motor vehicles? That's what a bike boulevard is designed to do. So from an engineering perspective, when we think about the e-bikes, we can talk about, well, can we make it so the e-bikes can really go faster and take advantage of that extra speed? That's actually sort of what a bike boulevard is. I could design my bike trail, my shared use path, and things like that also at a higher design speed to make it more suitable for those e-bikes. So that is a design option that I may have available in some places. More frequently, though, we may be situations where we're actually trying to make the e-bikes operate more slowly. There are engineering interventions you can use to slow those bikes down a little bit. Not just e-bikes. We were talking about earlier about having a cargo bike or having a kid on a tandem bicycle. If you have to go through a lot of chicanes and things like that with a bike like that, you're going to slow way down. You cannot just whip your way through one of those. You got to slow down to do that. So there are ways that you can use from an engineering perspective to force slower movement by some of these vehicles and force them to slow down a little bit. So those are something that can be put into that. Mix it up and separate them. So, and sometimes just the fact that you're operating in mixed traffic is going to force people to slow down. We see this a lot of times on crowded paths and things like that. The cyclists complain they can't go fast enough. Everybody else complains they're getting run over by bicyclists. And so, mixing them is an option. On the other hand, you can also separate them. There's something called a sidewalk level bicycle lane. How many of you have ever seen a bike lane on the road, completely empty, and next to it, riding on the sidewalk, is a bicyclist, somebody riding on the sidewalk? People don't like to ride on that street level. They like to ride up at the sidewalk. Well, there is a sidewalk level bike lane. Basically, we take the bike lane, we jack it up to sidewalk level. Folks will actually ride on that thing, and much more easily than they will on the bike lane itself. But you have to keep the sidewalk, the cyclist and the pedestrians separated once they're up there. But there's ways to do that from an engineering perspective. So there are engineering solutions that can be brought to these things. They take money, which means a lot of times they take time because they have to be programmed. They may require taking space away from something else. That's always a really fun conversation to go in and talk about removing your on-street parking, for instance, and making the sidewalk wider or putting in a bike facility. Yeah, you can open up that can of worms in your community if you would like, but and in places it makes sense to do so. But it is something that you obviously want to approach with caution. But those are all things that can be done from an engineering perspective. And Nathan, did you want to speak a little bit to this? Because I know you've done more work with the level of traffic stress. This is something that we started when I was at FDOT. I was not satisfied with where it got to before I left, and so I've not done much with it, but I know you have worked with it some there. So
yeah, I think we can, we're going to run out of time. So we can just, really the note here is that we're designing the facility based on the typical user. When I reference this figure, I typically try and point back to the percentages. So my target audience, when I'm the designer working on developing a bike-friendly design, my core audience is the LTS1, LTS2. If I'm designing for that 4 to 7% of confident riders, I'm missing my target market of the larger portion of the population. So we really want to design our facilities to accommodate riders, acknowledging that micromobility, the influence it has is it does raise you up a level in confidence a lot of times, but you're still going to ride in those facilities where you feel comfortable. That's why a lot of times we see folks riding on the sidewalk. I do want to pause really quick because we did have a question come in through
Yeah.
the chat. So Fadi, who's with the county, asked at crosswalks at the crosswalk, there's conflict between the ped and bike phase and the permissive left or right turns. Newer cars identify these conflicts and warn drivers with a beep or some kind of an indication on the on-screen displays. It would be useful if electric bikes can receive a similar conflict message emitted by newer cars. I would say from my perspective, when we've had conversations about technology, there's been more focus on the technology in the vehicle to alert the driver or actually to use automation to autonomously brake or to avoid the collision. So in all the conversations that I've had, I've not, aside from just hearing anecdotally, people would like to have micromobility equipped with some sort of an alert or a warning. That's something that's desired, but probably not very practical. So we're probably going to continue to see more of a push for that technology to remain in vehicles, potentially with some discussion about, could we be using our phones or something like that? So.
Well, let's see if on the next slide we can kind of address that too, looking at education. This is, if I don't get any further, this is good to wind up on if we don't go any further than this, but that's fine. And this is something that I was hearing in the earlier presentations as well, is really a need for this education. And I think that if we can get the education out there, it makes a lot of these other problems, if they don't go away, they at least get a lot easier. So the kinds of crashes that you get into on a bicycle, one of the things we teach people in bicycling classes is you imagine this whole world of things that are hazards to you on a bicycle. And we list about a dozen of them. And then we go through and systematically eliminate all the ones that are actually not under the control of the bicycle. And you end up with only a couple things that are really out of your control completely as a bicyclist. And even those things you have some control over at the end of the day. And so, but you have to be educated about those things. Otherwise, you think that the whole world is out to get you because of the way you're riding. But in fact, the way you're riding is the problem. A good example, don't ride on the sidewalk. We always tell people, do not ride on the sidewalk. It's extremely dangerous. But when you do ride on the sidewalk, because you will, and we all do, this is how you do it safely. So you can teach people to ride safely on the sidewalk. Here's the trick. You ride very slow. You cannot ride on the sidewalk at 10 or 15 miles an hour. You're going to get into a crash. But if you have to be on a sidewalk and you want to be on a sidewalk, you can do it. Just remember, you're going way faster than a pedestrian, and it's on you to take responsibility for that. That's a really simple message. That if you do it, you can ride safely on a sidewalk anywhere. But you have to know how to do that. That's an education thing. Riding as a vehicle is another thing you can be educated to do. Again, maybe not on a 45, 50 mile an hour road, but certainly on a 20, 25 mile an hour road or local street, one of these bicycle boulevard type deals. Riding as a vehicle is something that you can be educated to do. And even if you don't intend to ever ride as a vehicle, knowing how to do it will keep you out of crashes. You'll begin to understand why crashes take place and why motorists are hitting cyclists, why cyclists are running into motorists, because you're not thinking about how the traffic system works. Once you understand how the traffic system works, this gets to that issue of people wanting to turn right into pedestrians who are crossing the street, things like that. Being educated about those things will go a long way to avoiding those problems without having to install more technology on the vehicles. We talked about safety equipment earlier, conspicuity, wearing brightly colored things when you're going to be riding in mixed traffic, having lights at night, using all those things is very important. Wearing a helmet, the conversation came up earlier about how to get the kids to wear helmets. The best thing I've always found is you need to wear a helmet. If you're an adult with kids, you need to wear a helmet around your kids. They will do what you do. If you tell them to wear a helmet and you're not going to wear one, guess what? They're not going to wear one when you're not there. So, if you do, they'll wear one all the time, and they'll just get used to doing it. So anyway, cool soapbox on that. So you can train the cyclist for education. We can train the motorist as well. There's some very good materials out there now, and highway safety has come a long way in the last few years on this as well. We can train the planners and the engineers. For so many years, we were running into engineers who were thinking they could put in a 4-foot bike lane, and that's all that was required to make life safer and better for cyclists. It's not. It needs a lot more than that. We can train those folks to do that. We had well-intentioned planners who were designing bike facilities that were really not good. and they actually made things worse. That has cleaned up a lot with the advent of NACTO. NACTO has done a whole lot for helping planners understand better how to design good bike facilities. We can train those folks. We can train our law enforcement partners, and I guess I'll wrap up there with law enforcement because quite often we may find that we're training the cyclists how to ride safely on the street, but the law enforcement folks themselves have not been trained on that. And so they may be enforcing laws that maybe don't exist or in a way that's not helpful. They may not know what is allowed on the law. Believe it or not, there are some gray areas in the law, and sometimes it's helpful to know, what's actually intended by things. You may have something that says in this part of the law it says one thing, in another part of the law it says something else, or gives you an out for that or whatever. So you need to know that. So law enforcement needs to be knowing where is it legal to ride, where is it not legal to ride. That's changing every day. Some of you pointed out my e-bike works one way in my town. It works a different way in a different town as far as the law is concerned. That's not confusing. So that is certainly an education issue. This 3 feet passing distance, how is that applied? So those are all education issues. And bringing your law enforcement folks in to work as a partner with you is always the better way to do it. You never want to be in a situation when you're trying to explain the law to a police officer while you're on a bike. That's a bad situation to be in. So you want everybody to be agreed on the rules up front from that. And the last one is encouragement. ASHO recognizes something called safety in numbers now. Basically, here's the way it works, folks. If you get more people out on bikes, motorists begin to expect to see people on bikes. And when they start expecting to see people on bikes, they see people on bikes. We see what we expect to see most of the time. And so this very idea that anything that gets more people out there actually does seem to help. This is actually an ASHO now. So I'm gonna stop there, and we can just take any other questions or have some conversation or however you would like to do. But that's pretty much what we had for it. So thank you.
Yeah, if you could advance to the next slide, that's just our question slide. We do have a question from Ford Pinellas, so I want to put that up and answer it live. So Ford Pinellas, one of our MPO partners, asked, can you speak to some successful examples of traffic calming on a shared use path? So I'll start with my answer. One of the ways that we had done some design to traffic calm was putting in a splitter island. So it forced our riders to split and ride around that in their independent directions. In that case, it was a directional shared use path. So we introduced some directionality to split folks as they were approaching a bridge. One of the challenges that I would implore everybody to consider as a designer, if you are designing a facility, is that as you start doing some of the zigzagging chicane type treatments, you have to recognize that bicyclists are going to ride as straight and flat as they possibly can. And you may be introducing a head-on collision potential as you introduce horizontal deflection. So you do have to think about how a rider is going to operate in that space and what sort of unintended consequences or unexpected outcomes that may have. We certainly don't want to introduce those sorts of outcomes in our designs. So you do have to think about how the user is going to respond to the design that you have put out into the world. And some of these potential design treatments have unintended consequences that, if not accounted for, you'll end up with a not great design. You have anything to add to that, Dwayne?
Yeah, I definitely and look at national guidance on this, the NACTO guide, ASHTO guide. If you think you've got a great idea for how to do this and it's never been done before, look at it very clearly and maybe have somebody else look at it as well, because a common thing that we see are folks will come up with these, kind of homegrown ideas for stuff, and they turn out not to be very good ideas. A very common one is bollards. A bollard is basically a post that you put in the trail, and they are extremely hazardous. They're very hard to see. They're easy to hit them with your pedal. If you run into them, they can cause a really bad crash. So bollards, if they're ever used, they have to be used very carefully. You got to do a lot of design around them. Just basically don't use them. But there's a lot of other ways you can get into this, and that all comes down to deflection. Horizontal or vertical deflection, for the most part, is what you're going to be relying on a trail. And there are a number of ways that you can do that with chicaning and things like that. But as Nathan said, you can't just drop it on somebody. They got to know it's coming. You got to prepare them for it. They have to be able to see it so that they can respond to it. A lot of thought goes into these things. You can't just drop it in there. But if you follow the ASHTO bike guide or the NACTO guides, you'll probably stay out of trouble with it. But there are techniques in there for that.
All right. Well, we're just about up on time. I did have a series of questions, and I'm going to ask, or I'm going to just offer one insight. If I could make sure that everybody takes away one thing today that they didn't know before they arrived, it's that there is an e-bike rated helmet standard. So it's NTA 8776 is the name of that standard, NTA 8776. And it's a Dutch cycling standard for a 28 mph rated helmet. So, one important lesson that we can all learn is that there is evolution in technology. One of those things is a new rating for helmets. That is a 2016 standard, and we don't have an equivalent standard here in the United States. So, if you learn nothing else today, take away that that's what you should be looking for if you're riding an e-bike, to get a certified helmet that's designed for your micromobility device. With that, I'll turn it over to Brian to close us out.
Yes, thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Nathan. That was really insightful. I love that it was more of a conversation in the presentation that we received today from you both. There was commentary on the slides and responsiveness to one another. So I do appreciate your time, Dwayne. Thank you for coming us from our hometown, Tallahassee. Go Knowles. Appreciate you making the time this morning. And Nathan, thank you for your insights as well. It's very helpful. Just once again, to the participants, thank you for listening in today. We will be posting the slides and the recording on the TPA's website.